today I thought I'd ask you some questions about your time in Harlem. Being, a native son from Harlem is really special, and you're certainly one of the brightest sons to come out of Harlem. So I thought we could chart your upbringing.
Well, thank you very much. I'd be happy to.
Sure. Awesome. So I guess we should begin at the beginning. So I read that you were born in your grandmother's kitchen on West 137th Street. Is that accurate?
Well, I'm not sure if I was in my grandmother's kitchen or not, but I know that I was born on 137th Street. That's what they told me.
So I know that you were surrounded by many churches like AME Zion and Abyssinian.
Right.
Yeah. Did the church play a pivotal role in your life?
Well, I played, and I mean playing as a child. I played in AME Mother Zion, which is on 136th Street. I had some Caribbean people in my family, so we went downtown to a Moravian church, which was sort of the churches that they had down in the islands for the natives down there. It was one of the churches at Moravian Church in Abyssinia. But mostly, most of my memories are from Mother Zion on 136th Street.
You could talk a little bit about your memories of the AME Zion.
Well, it was really a great place. It was my older brother. My older brother is 5 years my senior.
Okay.
And Val used to play basketball in there and everything. Mm-hmm. And I used to just hang out around the church, and there was another church right down the street, which was the pastor was Paul Robeson's brother. I don't know if you know about that church.
I'm not familiar offhand.
Yeah, well, that was Paul Robeson's brother, who was the pastor, and that was right down the street from Mother Zion.
Okay.
And I was a kid. I didn't play too much there. I used to play when I was in. I went to PS 89, which was elementary school on 135th Street and Lenox Avenue.
Wow.
And at that age, we used to play, just kids playing around. We used to play in the Lafayette Theater on 7th Avenue. And there was a big musicians club near there. Yeah. But just children playing as a child.
Given, that you were a child at the height of the Harlem Renaissance, I mean, it's talk about such a zeitgeist for Black culture and identity to this very day. Do you credit the Harlem Renaissance in your artistic upbringing, or do you consider it to be influential?
Well, I think it was very influential because when I was around 3 or 4 years old, my grandmother used to take me with her on marches, civil rights marches in Harlem. Wow. And we used to march up Lenox Avenue for W.E.B. Du Bois. They had some marches for Paul Robeson. We used to march for another civil rights matter at the time. Was Scottsboro boys who were being apprehended and lynched for something they didn't do. Mm-hmm. And so we used to march. My grandmother was really an activist. Mm-hmm. So she used to take me with her And so there I'd be marching with my grandmother, and we used to march for the, there was a store
Mhm.
in Harlem which did not allow blacks to sit at the lunch counter. I
Wow.
think it was called Bloomstein's.
Okay.
So I think around the time that Harlem was really just getting integrated.
Yeah.
So that was one of the issues that arose quite often.
Mhm.
Bloomstein's was on 125th Street, which was the main stem street in Harlem.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that was I think it was a department store type place. Anyway, I had introductions into the civil rights movement, the quest for this kind of civil rights. And I learned that very early on. I learned about Paul Robeson, who became my idol, and
Wow.
also W.E.B. Du Bois
Mhm.
and some other people. But as a young boy, I was marching there with my grandmother, and it really gave me an early education into the civil rights issue existing in the United States.
Wonderful. Wow. I mean, I could just imagine. I'm a native Brooklynite, and growing up in Bed-Stuy in the '80s was just such like an education in so many ways, culturally, politically. So I can only imagine what Harlem must have been like for you as a young boy, especially.
Yeah, that was in the 30s. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would have been in the 30s. It was quite remarkable and endearing. I mean, I am so happy that I was born that time and in that place.
Yeah. It always fascinated me how close in proximity you were to Stryver's Row, which is, of course, the much more affluent section of Harlem. As a kid in Bed-Stuy, it was always hard for me to walk through the nearby Fort Greene because, they had the nicer houses and the cleaner blocks, and, felt a little jealous. Did you ever feel any sort of resentment being so close to Stryver's Row? Was it like the haves versus the have-nots, or?
Well, it was the haves versus the haves, but it was not a resentment thing. We looked up to, we appreciated the people that lived on, we were proud of the black people that lived on Stryver's Row, which was 137th Street between 7th and 8th.
Yeah.
And so we never lived there. When we were in Harlem, we lived in the tenement houses. But no, it wasn't any kind of resentment, and at all. I mean, Stryver's Row was a wonderful place. It was, at least in our group, we all looked forward to having a place like Stryver's Row right in the neighborhood. So we did not look on it as the haves versus the have-nots. We looked at it as just one of the fantastic places in the culture of Harlem.
Yeah, yeah, and well put. One of my favorite compositions of yours happens to be Stryver's Row. I feel like you can. I really feel like you capture. I wanted to ask you about that because of the fact that I just feel like you feel like it's coming from someone who's lived in Harlem, who's breathed Harlem, who really knows Harlem, and that joy comes through on the track. But it's also distinctive because the song is almost entirely a solo, which is kind of pioneering and daring. I gather that, given your experience, a lot of that pride went into composing that.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's funny you should say that. My friend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
Yes.
he always says, "Oh, Sonny, that's my favorite song of yours, Shriver's Row." So I say that also to you. Thank you very much.
Oh,
Shriver's Row, as I said, was something of pride for us. There was no enmity involved in our relationship with Shriver's Row. It was just a prideful place.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was Harlem. Harlem was not huge.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in 135th, 136th, 137th, 138th Street in different houses. And, I lived all over Harlem. In high school, I went to Benjamin Franklin High School, which was down on 116th Street, in an Italian section.
Yeah.
That was very interesting too, because it was a brand new school they built. There was another Benjamin Franklin, which Daniel Patrick Moynihan, you might have heard of him.
Yes, I have.
Right, so he went to that Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, wow.
And then the new one, which they built, which they bused a lot of the black kids from uptown down to the new one, because I think it was a facility that was large and brand new, and they needed to fill it. So they had, now, as you may know, we had a lot of early altercations with the people, the Italian people in that neighborhood, who didn't appreciate having these young black kids coming down to the school every day. But, all of that ended when Frank Sinatra came down to the school and sang and gave a concert. And then the next week, King Cole, the Nat King Cole Trio came down and played in our hall there. And after that, there was no trouble. Blacks and whites got along, and it was quite remarkable. I think they loved, Italian people were very proud of Frank Sinatra. And he also preached to them about the virtues of not being fighting with each other and all of that. At that point in his career, he was very much on the liberal side, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Yeah, and then anyway, the next week, Nat King Cole, the King Cole Trio, who's everybody, we loved him just like they loved Frank Sinatra. So after that, there was no trouble down there in that school, and I stayed there, and I matriculated from Benjamin Franklin High School.
Wow, it's amazing. I was actually going to ask you about, going to a school in a predominantly Italian neighborhood, but it sounds like music was the thing that kept everyone together. It kept everyone at peace.
Absolutely. When we first moved down there, we had a lot of fights with the boys down there. The families used to throw stuff out the window at us when we get off the bus. It was a lot of that stuff, but it was all taken care of. The beauty of music, and I have to thank Frank Sinatra for coming down there, because it was an Italian neighborhood, and they really respected anything about Frankie Boy.
Yeah.
So, Now,
Yeah.
for us, it was great because we all loved the King Cole Trio.
Yeah.
And they might, a lot of Italian guys might have known about him also. But
Mhm.
we definitely, he was one of my favorites and everybody's in our
Wow.
community. He was
Did,
our hero.
did you have the opportunity to speak with Nat King Cole?
No, he was
Okay.
a big star, and I was his little
Gotcha.
schoolboy.
Oh.
But I did. Years later, he was staying with a famous band leader, Andy Kirk. Andy Kirk lived up on what was then referred to as Sugar Hill.
Mhm.
And our family moved up on Sugar Hill around 1939. Now, we didn't move, we weren't into sugar, but we were living up in the area, but we didn't
Okay.
have the sugar like a lot of people had
Yeah.
the sugar up there on Sugar
Yeah.
Hill. It was a great place up there, and Andy Kirk, who had a son, Andy Kirk Jr., a great young musician, saxophone player,
Mhm.
and so we used to go up to Andy Kirk's house
Wow.
and hang out with Andy Kirk
Mhm.
Jr. and his father
Mhm.
was very nice guys. His father and Nat King Cole was staying with them. So I used to
Wow.
see him, we'd say, oh man, there's Nat King Cole, you know, and then he's living in the same house.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was that about uh, about Sugar Hill. Of course, there
Mhm.
were a lot of other places in Sugar Hill. I don't know if you want to go on about Sugar Hill, but
Yes,
there was
please.
another
Please, by all
building
means.
on Sugar Hill on Edgecombe Avenue where we lived. We
Okay.
lived on Edgecombe, which was between one long block between 150th and 155th Street. Just one straight block of houses. There wasn't no disconnection. And it was overlooking the park. It was Edgecombe Avenue. It was a nice place. Uh, and I could look out at the Yankee Stadium,
Wow.
and everything was really great. And of course, as I said, we didn't live in one of the fanciest houses, which were occupied, a little bit more affluent people than we were. But speaking of that, this building 409 Edgecombe was
Okay.
like the White House of Harlem
Mm.
because we had all of these great political leaders lived at 409.
Oh
I
wow.
used to see W.E.B. Du Bois coming home all the time, and
Oh
he'd
wow.
look at us disapprovingly, sort of playing handball outside of his house and stuff. And then we had Thurgood Marshall live there.
Oh.
Roy Wilkins,
Good.
too.
Okay.
He lived there. Uh, and Walter White lived there.
Yes. Yes.
Do you remember Walter White?
I know of Walter White. I believe with the NAACP.
He was the founder of the NAACP.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, I just got a book. I heard it advertised on the radio. There was a fellow that just wrote the story of Walter White.
Oh.
See, Walter White, besides having the name White, he
Yeah.
could pass for white.
Yes.
He was very. If you saw him, you would think he was white.
Mhm.
He used to go down south and infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan and all of these people and build up cases that got a little bit of justice for black citizens in the South.
Wow.
So that's why Walter White was such an influential character. Nobody knew that much about him.
Yeah.
But there's a book that just came out. I just bought it, in fact, a few days ago. He ended up divorcing his wife.
Oh.
He had two children. They were older than me, but I knew, I used to see them all the time.
Oh.
And he ended up divorcing his wife and falling in love with a white woman named Poppy Cannon. Poppy Cannon was into the media. I think she had a show or something, but she was in media. She was a white woman. Right. And now Walter White divorced his wife and fell in love with Poppy Cannon. Now this brought up a big problem because everybody thought Walter White was black.
Right.
See, at least uptown they did. Down south he looked like a white man.
Yeah.
Uptown we knew he was Walter White. He was a white-looking black man.
Right.
But the big issue at that time was that we don't want any black men marrying our white women. That was one of the big issues. Yeah. So what happened was that Walter White is now in love with Poppy Cannon. He divorced his wife, and they got married. Poppy Cannon got married with Walter White. Now the thing is that was you can imagine. He was a guy, now they know he's black, and what did he do? He married a white woman, which was what we were preaching against. Don't worry about black men worrying about marrying white women. That's not what we're interested in. We're interested in freedom. But then here comes Walter White. So it was some story. Yeah. But at any rate, as you know, that's all covered over now. I mean, there's so many interracial marriages now that people might not like it, but it's so many of them now. There's not much people can do about that.
It's not right. It's not controversial. I'm a biracial kid, so
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It wasn't easy growing up as a kid.
I know.
Yeah, but happily things, are getting better. But I think, people like Walter White certainly had to pave the way for that to happen. The attitude to change around that.
Right. Well, the reason he did that was because of his work with the NAACP. He was able, with Thurgood Marshall, who was his top lawyer, they were able to go down south and convict a lot of these rednecks for lynching black people and for doing everything they could do to black people. And without having any way that we had any way of getting back at them. But we did. Walter White, who looked white, and he went down there and he got a lot of cases won for what became the NAACP. Amazing. You know what I mean? But it was quite a story. And then like Eleanor Roosevelt, who was a very fine woman. I really respect Eleanor Roosevelt. She always tried to integrate blacks into society. But even she quit the NAACP when Walter White married this white woman, Poppy Cannon.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, no, but it was a big thing because this is what he was fighting against, this conception. And then here he ends up, first they realize he's black, and then he marries a white woman. So it was quite a thing. And this is stories that a lot of black people don't know about that or know exactly Walter White's story.
Right.
Anyway, I just got this book, White Lies, by this guy, Bain. Wonderful book. And since I lived up on Edgecombe Avenue, and then I used to see, I didn't see Walter White too much. I used to see all the other people that were up there, Roy Wilkins and Thurgood Marshall and W.E.B. Du Bois. They all lived in 409 Edgecombe.
Mr. Rollins, had you ever encountered or met Marcus Garvey? I know you were young, at the height.
Yeah, no, I never, I think Marcus Garvey had gotten involved. I could say that he was gotten out of the way by the time I was born in 1930.
Right.
And I think he got in trouble in the 1920s, something like that.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah.
So I never got a chance. But of course, I heard a lot about Marcus Garvey.
Yeah.
I mean, Marcus Garvey used to be, we lived on 135th Street. It's one of the places near Lenox Avenue. And they used to have all of these guys, Marcus Garvey, A. Philip Randolph, all these people would come on the corner, put up their soapbox, and start to preach to the people. And Marcus Garvey was one guy when he came to the States. I think he's from Jamaica. When he came to the States, he went up and he asked A. Philip Randolph, can I speak? He said, A. Philip Randolph said, sure. So Marcus Garvey got up, and they said Marcus Garvey's voice was so loud that just standing on the soapbox, you could hear him down to 125th Street.
Wow.
From 135th Street. Now that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but I knew that he looked like a guy that would have that louder voice. I was reading in this book that I just got, they said that Marcus Garvey's movement was diametrically opposed to the NAACP. They were the two groups who were vying to get the Negro loyalty.
Yeah.
Now, it's a very interesting. Now, Marcus Garvey had a lot of black people. So it had nothing to do with, he was from the islands and all that, nothing to do with that. There's a lot, in fact, Miles Davis's father was a big Garveyite.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of black people would say, man, this guy is talking the talk.
Yeah.
But Marcus Garvey would say, well, I came to Washington and, this nation had their army and stuff. You had the army and the Danish army. He said, well, where's the black people's army? Where's our army?
Right.
See? So Marcus Garvey he didn't take no stuff. He was, and that's why he had a lot of blacks that were followers of Marcus Garvey.
There's so many pivotal political figures and important black leaders has had such a profound impact on you.
Absolutely.
That young. I thought we could talk a little bit about your family, particularly your parents. I know, or at least I've read that your mom was the one that exposed you to the arts at a young age.
Well, my mother was very, there were three of us. It was me, I was the youngest, and my sister was a couple of years older than me, and my brother, who was 5 years older than me. But my mother was a very a weird person because she used to take us to all of it. She used to take us to light opera or something. She used to take us to the movies. She took us to Radio City Music Hall. She took us to the Roxy Theater. And that's where I heard some of the entertainers. She took us up to Colonial Park when I was really young to see the Pirates of Penzance.
Yeah.
As a little boy, then I went up, walking up Lenox Avenue to Colonial Park. And that's where the Pirates of Penzance was. Wood and Sullivan.
Yeah.
Yes, so my mother took us all over. Took us all over and exposed us to culture. Yes, so that was really fantastic. My father was in the Navy. I didn't, so he wasn't home that much. My father was in the Navy. He wasn't home that much. I used to go down to, when I was off of school, I used to go down to Annapolis and spend time with my father down there during when school was out. But he was a Navy guy. He had been in the Navy all of his life. And he was really a chief. He was a chief. He was my father was the highest point a black man could get in the United States Navy.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he was like a chief petty officer, which was the highest you could get being black at that time. A lot of his friends were all black friends were all chief petty officers. We knew a lot of them, and they come to our house, we come to their house, and all this stuff. And but as long as we're speaking, and I don't mind speaking about this, my father got court-martialed because my father was in charge of a officers club where the officers to go and hang out in Annapolis. And there was some fraternization. As if, that's so what? Was that strange with the fraternization between races? No, but it was something which had to be done very undercover. Back in this was back in 1940s, early 40s when I used to go down there or spend summer with my father. And I noticed some of these white guys that would be working around there, just sweeping up the grounds, and they would resent my father because my father carried himself like he wasn't inferior to them. See, and they resented that. And then also my father ran this North 7 Officer Club where the officers used to hang out in there. And so I don't know the incident. I'm not going to speak to that because I wasn't there. They caught much of my father. After all the years my father spent in the Navy. And there was an admiral, a guy named Admiral Arthur M. Radford. He was the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So he wasn't just a white guy, and he was good friends with my father. Him and his wife came up to Harlem to visit my family. And this was in the 30s. And here we are living up in Harlem, and we were on 135th Street. It wasn't we wasn't living up on the hill in 409 and nothing like that. We was living right down in the ghetto. So it would be called. And here comes this white man and his wife coming right down there to visit my family, my father. So anyway, that was a respect that my father had, and with everybody, because he, the neighbor, as I said, really young. Anyway, so they court-martialed him, and we are fighting a case right now with the Navy, trying to get the court-martial dismissed.
I love that. I mean, it's just a shame that it's taken this many years for that to happen.
I know.
Have you made any progress?
Well, we have some people working on it. I think they call them the JAGs or something like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right. So they're working on it, and we're just hoping that something happens. Nothing has happened yet, but the case is still open, and we've paid them and everything, and we're just hoping that something happens.
We have a lot in common, being native New Yorkers, but one of the things that I'm also proud of is the fact that you're a Caribbean American. Your family immigrated from the Virgin Islands to the States. How prevalent was Caribbean culture in your household? I know you mentioned the Moravian church that you went to as a young boy.
It was probably enough because our grandmother used to live with us sometime. So we had some calypso records and stuff. So I heard a lot of that music. But being born at home and living and growing up, I heard so much music, different kinds of music. I mean, I heard a lot of jazz. A lot of jazz. I heard some of this Afro-Cuban music. People like Machito. And these guys. Noro Morales, all this, what they would call Latino today. That's what they would call it.
Yeah.
So I heard all of that. I heard all of that music. I mean, jazz was my thing, but I can play calypso better than a lot of people that were from the islands.
Amen.
You know, when I used to play in London, a lot of these people come in there and said, "Oh man, Sonny's the king of calypso, so I can get down now with the calypso." But my love, of course, was jazz, and the guy that I heard, which really turned me on, was Fats Waller.
Okay.
And with Fats Waller, who was a great entertainer as well as a musician. He was just, oh man, so when I heard him, I said, man, a light came on in my head. I said, this is where I need to go. And I tried, and that was my thing, being a jazz musician. Louis Jordan was my early favorite.
Yeah.
You know, and I had a lot of his records. And my uncle used to go with a lady from Georgia, Lizzie. And when I would spend time with them, she had all of these blues records and Louis Jordan and everything. So I had a nice grounding as a young kid coming up in Harlem.
One of the things that you said in an interview that struck me was that musicians weren't just famous, but they were also accessible. So to have, you know, a mentor like Thelonious Monk, or to be in such close proximity to Louis Jordan, as you mentioned, and Coleman Hawkins, can you talk a little bit more about that? You started to talk about how those musicians, you know, were your grounding, especially in your development.
Oh, sure. Well, as I got older and we moved up on the hill, as I said, we moved up on the hill in 1939.
Okay.
Up on the hill and on Edgecombe Avenue, and then on further up Edgecombe Avenue there was another big building, 555. A lot of prominent people. I think Count Basie lived there at one time.
Wow.
And and Paul Robeson lived in 555, which was about 5 blocks, 160th Street on Edgecombe. But anyway, as we were growing up, I was 9, but I was already playing saxophone because I made my mother get me a saxophone when I was about 7. And with other guys, we met and formed a band. But we had our mentors right up there. We could see them going to the store every day, or hanging out. John Kirby, Big Fit Catlett, Coleman Hawkins, Andy Kirk, Erskine Hawkins. I mean, I just name them and I could remember them. They all lived right around the corner from us.
Wow.
So we just saw them, we were too young, but boy, we said, oh man, look, there goes John Kirby. That's what we were saying, just looking at these guys. And I must say also, they were all very respectable, high-class gentlemen.
Okay.
I didn't see no black people up there getting drunk and all this stuff. These guys, that's where they lived, up on the hill, and they were all, it was just our thrill to see these guys.
Wow.
To see them. Now, eventually, as we got older, we were playing and we got familiar somehow with these older musicians, and some of these guys, okay, let's see what you can do, kid. So they would give us a little chance to play with them.
Wow.
Because that's what they know. They're looking for young black talent too. So that's how we began getting into all these bands.
Yeah.
And Coleman Hawkins, of course, he became my super idol. Afterwards, it was Coleman Hawkins. And Coleman lived right not far from me.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, I used to go to Coleman's house on 153rd Street there and wait. The doorman would say, oh, yeah, well, would you like to see Miss Hawkins? Well, he's not here right now. So I said, yes, sir, but I have an autograph photo I want him to sign for me when he comes in. So the guy said, okay. So I waited on the doorstep until he came home at night. And I sort of knew that he came in around 6 o'clock or so.
Okay.
This big Cadillac and stuff. And parked in back. So here comes Coleman Hawkins. So I said, oh, Mr. Hawkins, would you sign my autograph for me?
Wow.
So he was, I'm sure he was pleased by that. And of course, as it went, I ended up knowing him. I ended up recording with him.
Amazing.
And the whole thing. But so Uptown was a paradise, was where all the successful black people lived at that time, the politicians and the musicians.
Yeah.
And Duke Ellington lived on St. Nicholas Avenue, right in the same area.
You had an education at every single block in Harlem is, filled with a pivotal figure. It feels like paradise.
It was paradise.
It sounds like paradise. Yeah.
We had the mentorship.
So one of the bands that you started, I believe, when you were in high school was with Kenny Drew, Art Taylor, and Jackie McLean. Is that correct?
Right.
Oh my goodness! I mean, talk about all of these luminaries. All of you went on to have these incredible careers. Did you all grow up together? How did you all come?
Yeah, well, I met all of them when I moved up on the hill.
Okay.
Because as I said, I was 9 years old, but I had been studying saxophone So when we moved up on the hill, I met guys my age that also played instruments. Arthur Taylor, Jackie McLean, Kenny Drew, Walter Bishop Jr. So we ended up forming a band. And that was our band. So we had a band, and we had a little band of Freddie Jackson, the Young Dukes of Rhythm. I remember that. So we were competing with them. You know, so we had to make sure we blew them out whenever we were the top guy. You know, we called ourselves the Counts of Bop. That was anyway, we were serious. You know, I mean, I'm as serious about it then as I am now. Yeah. We all love the music, and some of us were good enough to make it.
So I know a few years ago, the Schomburg, which is just a few blocks away from where you were born, acquired your memorabilia, your recordings, your photos. I think they even have your saxophone. It's just incredible. How important was it for you to have these personal items be a part of this collection, especially at the Schomburg?
Right. Well, it was you know, the Schomburg originally was on 135th Street.
Oh, okay.
Between Lenox and 7th.
Okay.
And it was just a regular library. So I used to go in there occasionally. I was too young, but my older brother and sister went in there. Yeah. And older people, we went into the Schomburg Library. Eventually, I think they bought out a big portion of 136th Street, and they expanded it. So it became not just a library, it became an institute for Black culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was wonderful. So just the fact that I'm in there and they wanted my stuff to be put in there, I mean, it's a tremendous honor for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tremendous, and you know, there's people in there that I respect highly. Malcolm X is in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And R.C. Davis and Ruby D.
Wow.
And James Baldwin is in there. And so they have some really people that have made a difference in the Black culture. So I'm very, very, you know, very pleased that they selected me to be there. So I'm still trying to live up to that.
Oh,
really?
You certainly have. You certainly have. And I've been following, of course, as everyone has, you know, with the renaming of the Williamsburg Bridge to it's hopefully become the Sonny Rollins Bridge. Have you been involved in trying to make that happen? Because frankly, it's long overdue.
Well, that's very nice you said that. I mean, I used to go up there all the time and dine there every day for over a year. I forget how long it was, but so yeah, it would be appropriate if they wanted to do that. But you know, I had a hard life also. See, I had the musician's life. I got involved with bad drugs and all that stuff. So I came all the way up from the bottom. And so I've been getting through everything, done everything, and I got out of that. I survived. Yeah. So that might be, I don't know, if they want to do that, that should be a terrific honor. But, you know, that's okay. I'm glad people even thought about that. I'm not involved in it, but every now
Okay.
and then people still talk about it. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that I got into the Schomburg.
Yeah.
I'll be satisfied with that because
Mhm.
that's a high honor for me. And
Yeah.
right now what I'm doing, and
Mhm.
I'm starting a 501c3, which I'm going to dedicate it to young minorities who are very talented but did not have the advantages to go to a top-notch music school and all of that stuff.
Oh,
So
that's
that's the
wonderful.
next, yeah, that's the next thing that I'm doing right now. And I
Okay.
want that to be, at least
Mhm.
end my life with that. So I'm working on getting that started now,
Okay.
and just so be something that youngsters need,
Mhm.
especially talented guys that they need to have a music school, good school they could go to.
Yeah.
And besides, not just that, we're going to have that also, but it's going to be
Mhm.
the mentoring. Because
Mhm.
it's one thing, all these downbeat, all these magazines, or have
Yeah.
people, oh yeah, they're going to give you a grant to study
Mhm.
for. But that's one thing. But you know what we
Right.
need is mentoring. We
Mm.
need people that have been in the business to tell these young, talented kids how to live their life, not
Yeah.
just going on the bandstand, because that's
Mhm.
enough. That'll carry you out of here.
Yeah.
Once you're good enough to have an opportunity of playing on the bandstand, then you
Mhm.
also need to have mentoring.
Mhm. Mhm.
Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. Very true. Very true.
That's what you
Yeah.
need.
Yeah.
That's what this
Yeah.
I'm going to call it, for now, the tentative name is Sonny Rollins Freedom Suite, because I
Okay.
made a
Yeah.
civil rights album back in
Yeah.
1958,
Mhm.
and that was one of the first ones for modern jazz. After that one,
Okay.
then everybody came out with a
Yeah.
civil rights
Their own
album.
freedom suite. Will the nonprofit, sir, be in Harlem or in New York?
It's going to be all over.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's going to be all over because we have black mentors and black musicians who are well enough that can do the music and do the mentoring, but they don't have a chance. They're
Yeah.
involved with all of these white institutions
Mhm.
and they
Mhm.
get buried there.
Right.
They'll give you,
Right.
okay, well, yeah, I'm working with this. Okay, well, right,
Mhm.
then I'll have my family, will have money, I'll have enough, and I have my life.
Yeah.
But hey, we're
Right.
losing the young guys
Absolutely.
that
Mhm.
need to not only know about the music, but to know
Yep.
how you have to live out here.
Mhm. Mhm.
Live, at
Yeah.
mentorship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what's
It's
different than what's available now to
right.
our young brothers and sisters.
I love it. I guess I just have one question. I think it was related because, obviously we're sort of coming out of this pandemic, this, time in isolation. So now that you're working on the nonprofit, which is outstanding, I guess you do see jazz thriving and continuing to thrive and be a part of the culture, even, when the pandemic is finally over. You have hope for jazz in the future.
Well, that's a difficult question because
Okay.
they don't have the nightclubs that we came up in.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, and with this media, when you have everything, got every kind of music, you got a billion stations, and you can look at all kinds of music, all kinds of activity. It's hard to say, but I know this. I know that jazz is authentic and real and is a cultural thing for our people that we need to. It's not something we can lean on because we've created it. So how it's going to be effective when the pandemic is over, I don't know, but it's going to be there. And it's up to people that know about it, like myself and other guys that need to think of it in this way as a black cultural something. Say, black cultural something. I think that we're people that showed us how to do it. Art Tatum and all these people. And Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Lionel Hampton, all I mean going on and on and on. Lester Young, all the way up to the modern guys, Coltrane, and Ornette Coleman, and all these young guys. Yes. So that's what has to be emphasized. It's got, the black element has got to be emphasized, because other than that, it's just something that anybody can go to a big music school and learn to play jazz, and then it ends there. Then it ends there because it has no other cultural connection with the society.
Wow, beautiful. And you know, I think it just reminds me why I fell in love with jazz as a kid. You know, in Bed-Stuy, I grew up a few blocks away from Randy Weston and from where Lena Horne grew up, and it's powerful to know that you're part of this Black tradition and this rich and powerful Black tradition, and to keep that alive. You know.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And that's what it's about. It is a Black cultural thing. You can't take that out of it because, we got some Black people's working with white institutions and everybody's got a nice job. No, baloney. Then the culture stops. The culture is there. And it's a Black music culture.
Absolutely.
That's what it is. Don't throw that away for the sake of being getting along with everybody and all of that stuff.
Right.
I'm hanging in there and trying to fight the good fight here. And I've been part of such a great, being born in Harlem. I mean, you know, this is the spiritual capital of Black America. You know, and you mentioned the part of the when I first got on the phone with you. What do you call it? The Renaissance, the Black Renaissance.
Oh yes, the Harlem Renaissance.
Harlem Renaissance, yeah.
But I really think it should be called the Black Renaissance, frankly. But the Harlem Renaissance,
the same. Same thing, but I mean that means something. It means something. It means something. A lot came out of it.
Yeah.
Black culture is enriching the world. Jazz is enriching the world, has enriched the world, and will enrich the world more.
I guess, obviously, you know, as well as the pandemic and all of the political upheaval, it'd be remiss to not talk about Black Lives Matter and George Floyd. You know, having lived through so many different political movements and civil rights, how is Black Lives Matter, you know, how have you been reacting to it and following it?
Well, Black Lives Matter is a continuation of the Black struggle. Nothing new about Black Lives Matter. I mean, back when when my grandmother used to take me, then I learned about Paul Robeson and people that are fighting for equality. You know, and all of the lynchings and all that stuff that's happening. There's nothing new about Black Lives Matter, and as long as it is necessary to have a Black Lives Matter, then we got to have one.
Of all the things we have in common, we would also be remiss to not mention your yoga practice. May I ask, are you still practicing yoga?
Oh yeah, I'm practicing yoga. Yes. Now, yoga is not hatha yoga. That's one kind of yoga.
Yes.
So you're going to ask me, well, am I still standing on my head? No, that's hatha yoga.
Okay.
You see, but I'm still doing my other yoga. I'm doing Raja yoga. I'm doing Karma yoga and Jnana yoga, which these are all forms of the well, it's like an investigation, trying to find out who you are and trying to improve on yourself. So that's what yoga is. Yoga means a melding of body and soul. Yoga, to join the two. So I'm still doing yoga. I'm into my practices, which means a lot of study of things of that nature. You know, I love Buddha. I know all about him. He's part of the same thing as yoga, really.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm into that every day that I'm on the planet. I'm into my yoga, and I'm naturally into my Black culture.
I love it. I love it. It goes without saying that these two things have helped you greatly during the pandemic. I'm assuming that yoga and Black Pride was essential to have.
Oh yeah, always. I didn't need a pandemic to get me into yoga.
Of course. No, but I would imagine that your practice changes, or did it offer you more time to reflect on things, or?
Well, not really, because at my age, I've been doing this so long. A pandemic over 2 years or 3 years or all that doesn't really compute to me. And so what? So what? I mean, what the life is about 2 or 3 years, and you got to stay in the house. Doesn't mean anything for me. It means something for other people. Yeah, that's a particular circumstances that their life gives them. For me, it doesn't mean anything. What I'm doing my yoga and my I can't help it. The cultural. Music thing, of course, I'm into that. And it's all one. To me, it's all one.
Yeah.
Getting into my yoga and the correct thoughts, because yoga is trying to make you think right also. So you're not messing up with people, trying to live by the golden rule.
Yeah.
I don't want to mess over nobody, because I don't want nobody to mess over me. So I'm not so right. That's all part of yoga. See, so I'm the pandemic doesn't. I'm a little older than you, so it doesn't matter. For you, it probably is a big thing. The pandemic, it doesn't mean anything to me, really. If you really want me to tell you the truth, it doesn't mean anything to me. Pandemic. So what? Being Black in America is a pandemic.
Absolutely.
How about that pandemic?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but seriously, it's all the same. We're trying to improve ourselves as human beings, as people, We're trying to learn. We're trying to understand more about why we're here on the planet. What it's all about. And that's what's wonderful in my life. That's what makes me happy to get up and fight the good fight every day.
Oh, wow. I know that you, or at least I've read that you're no longer playing the saxophone. Clearly, you have so many projects that we just discussed, but are you also continuing to express yourself creatively, either in writing or in, in other
Not so much, because I had a physical thing that I had to stop playing.
Yes.
I had to stop blowing my horn. Let's put it that way. And so, it took me a while to face up to that, but I faced up to it. And my yoga practices really came to the fore. It helped me a lot to make the transition from just my music into, well, how else am I going to live out here? If I can't play my horn, I can't practice, man, what am I going to do? But then I realized, look, I'm happy that I was able to make a contribution to my art form. And so I did that. I wish I could have done more, but it wasn't to be. Fine. I accept it, and I'm going to continue trying to make myself a better person where yoga and Buddhism, all that comes in. Then I want to be a really well-rounded individual. I want to be a spiritual individual. See, but not a guy that's going around talking about spiritual and all that stuff. In fact, I hate that word, spiritual. Because people just, it's like saying God. They don't mention God to people, they run out of the room.
Right.
But that doesn't mean there isn't a God. It just means that he's been so, or it says God has been so messed up by people using it to their own advantage that you can't even talk about that. And spiritualism is the same thing. Oh, you into spiritualism? Well, no, I'm not into spiritualism. I'm myself trying to get to be a better human being. Period. Call it what you will.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm learning so much. You imparted so much wisdom and advice, but if you could offer any advice, being of course 91 years young, what would you tell people are the key things to have in order to be a happier person, to have a more meaningful life?
Well, some things are very helpful. Like I found it very helpful to observe the golden rule.
Yeah.
Do unto others as you have them do unto you. In other words, I don't want something from somebody and then they don't know that I took it out of their back pocket and I'm going on and I'm happy because I got it from them. No. And believe me, in my life, I've done a lot of these things. I was an ignorant person. I used to think I could steal from people and all this stuff. See, so I know what I've lived all this stuff. So for that, try to be but it's up to you. I would say that just look at some of the great people.
Yeah.
Try to be like Buddha. Try to be like Buddha. Try to be like Paul Robeson. How he fought for what he wanted, and was such a great guy at everything he did, and they still wanted to get him off the scene because he was black. You know, so there's lots of idols and inspirations for people to look up to. The woman, you know, Mary McLeod, Beth Hughes, Sojourner Truth. Look at all these great black people that have done things.
Yeah.
Say, but you've got to forget about selfishness. Every terrible selfishness is ignorance, straight out ignorant. So you got to get that. You got to work on it. You got to work on yourself. We're not born in this world perfect. That's not the point of life. The point of life is to try to get perfect. Can't say, oh, you think you're Buddha? No, I don't think I'm Buddha, but I'm trying to get to be Buddha. No, I'm not Buddha, but I want to get to be Buddha. I know how he's lived.
It almost sounds like, in all your experiences, that you were, it's fair to say, a student of life, constantly absorbing and looking and learning from all the people and all the things that you've lived through and absorbing it. I feel like that's how I would like to navigate life, is just to constantly
Well, then you go ahead and do it, because that's what it's about. We're here to learn. Nobody can say, oh, I got it. You haven't got it all. You have to learn. By observing, say, oh, well, gee, I did something stupid there. That's wrong. Okay, I learn. I learn. You live and learn, as this saying goes.
Oh boy. I think I'm out of questions. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you would like to say? Any final thoughts or?
No, I'm just happy to meet you. And
likewise.
Yeah, and let's if anything that I said makes sense and that can be emulated, fine. As I said, once I get this fund going, I don't know whether a foundation or academy, I don't know what it's going to be called yet. We're just putting it together now. But once that's going, then I'll have something that's more giving. That's one thing I want to say. Give rather than take. That's what I like. I don't want to give. I mean, I don't want to take. I want to give. See, and I think that is really where real happiness comes from. If you don't learn it in this life, you learn it in another life. You can't go through life taking. Oh yeah, I got mine. Oh yeah, you got yours. I got mine. No, you can't be like that. You can be like that, but it's not going to get you any place. You're going to have to come back and get it right. Well, then we're going to a whole nother topic there, so I better leave it where we have it now.
I was just going to ask you, where can people learn more about the nonprofit that you're starting? Will you or your team share that?
Yeah, well, they'll be learning about it. We're just starting it now. And so they'll be hearing about it. They'll be hearing about it. It's just we're just putting it together now, getting it registered, and it'll be something that people will know about, and not for me. That's you're Sonny Rollins, and I'm not care about Sonny Rollins. I've lived my life much forward, but for giving to somebody else, giving to young, disadvantaged, talented people. They're not going to just be out here and throw your life away when you're talented and you have something to give. Well, this is going to help you get there, fulfill your life. And not just that you're talented musically, you have some understanding of what life is out here. I've seen too many great musicians filter their life away because they didn't get that other thing. What do you do when you're off of the bandstand?
Yeah.
When you're on the bandstand, great. Oh boy, you ever hear this guy? Yeah, but what happens when you're off the bandstand? You got to be able to do both. It's body and it's soul.
Like Coleman Hawkins, like the song.
Ray Coleman Hawkins.
Yeah.
The song rendition ever made, body and soul.
A quick funny story. Randy Weston talked about when the single for Body and Soul came out. He rushed to the record store and bought I guess it was the last copy, and he went back to his house and opened up all the windows and blasted it through his record player, and it was just the wave of Coleman's sound. Just it was like religion for him, he said.
Oh, well, that's why Randy was one of my dear brothers.
Oh, wow.
I should say was, he is. I mean, all I've got to do is about Randy, and we're together.
Oh,
but that's funny. When I first heard Coleman Hawkins' Body and Soul, I heard it on 135th Street and 7th Avenue. There used to be a little bar there called the Big Apple. And in those days, he used to play the jukeboxes loud.
Wow.
And they had that thing in there loud all through Harlem.
Oh, my goodness.
And it wasn't a lot of singing and dancing. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it was just music. It was just a deep cultural expression of something. Came out of that. Just him and his horn.
Oh, this has just been incredible. I can't wait until this airs and everyone can hear, and it's just an honor. So thank you.
Thank you, and God bless you, and keep up the
thank you. Thank you. And you as well.